Like,
You got planet Earth going on in the backyard.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Never experienced that being in Cuba.
Call to order special council meeting, June 17th at 7 a.m. Call the order, please.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Lineback,
Yes.
Noonan,
Yes.
Poppenberger.
Yes.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have 6 items, or 7 actually total, on the agenda today. We'll turn the committee of the whole over to President Barrow.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. Having the agendas in front of you, are there any questions, concerns? Councilman Lineback?
Yes, Dr. Birch, could you just maybe fill me in? I forgot to follow up with this, but on the parking lot reconstruction, when's the last time that parking lot was resurfaced? You know, I looked at it the other day. And
when it was actually constructed.
When it was constructed, which was how long ago?
Gosh, I don't know the answer to that, Alan. During our process, do we know?
I'm not sure that we were able to determine.
Oh, okay. But
20, 25, maybe over 25 years, likely.
Okay. And in your determination, it definitely needs resurfacing. This is not just a cosmetic.
Yeah.
Because I see the grass growing through the cracks.
Yeah, and you could crack seal this thing and do it, but you're going to spend 30, 40,000 doing that, and there's bump outs that aren't in there, turnarounds that aren't in there that we would require anybody to do, so we should do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And plus the curbs are about 8 inches tall, which means we can simply cap the parking lot with 1.5 inches of asphalt and do the same thing without having to replace too many curbs.
Okay. I still have another one.
Do you have something else?
If someone else.
Is there anybody else have any questions or concerns? Councilman Lineback?
Okay, yeah. Well, I think some of the proposed changes in new business items 7A and 7B, 7A being the nuisance ordinance and 7B being the vacant or closed property registry. Well, I think quite a few of the items in there are appropriate and probably needed. I also think there's some proposed changes that are probably debatable, especially some of those that are granting even more control of the city over what goes on in people's homes. Now, these items were placed on the consent calendar at the last meeting as first readings by a majority vote of council. I believe it was the council's intent in doing so for residents to have time to digest the proposed changes and have an opportunity at a committee meeting to engage in the kind of open-ended discussion that can lead to better understanding of the issues and potentially better legislative solutions. I believe placing these ordinances on the agenda as new business items today and voting on them goes against the wishes expressed by council at that last meeting. Now, when I consider how to balance the risks and benefits, because we're always doing this, there's risk and benefit. I weigh the interests of the citizens being able to enjoy the comfort of their home or their apartment safely and free of any kind of health concerns. And the other side, interests of citizens being able to participate meaningfully in their government. On these two specific ordinances, I've determined that the potential risks assumed by waiting another 4 weeks before voting is outweighed by the benefit of having our citizens believe they are active participants in how Maumee is governed by allowing them the chance of actually doing so. For this reason, I'd like to make a motion to move 7A and 7B to the consent calendar as second readings.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that? Having none, that motion does not pass. Are there any other concerns? And I have a comment too, please, Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. Those items that had been moved seemed like a sensible thing to do for more dialogue, but we've had taken a step back and looking. We've had 4 years of looking at this and have had 4 years, 3.5 years with the EPA of dialogue. And for us not to take action that's needed in it, and it is an emergency, to slow down, do what we can, help divert illicit discharge into the river, I think council has taken that step back and looked at it. And we have had input, excuse me, over the last 3 years from residents. They have called, they have texted, they have emailed, and every council person up here, everybody up here, administrator, law director, has had discussions with our residents in very intimate detail about what, why, and how. So that's my reasoning. Thank you. Having seen no other questions of this and committee of the whole, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to citizen comments. Typically on a special meeting, there's no allotment for citizen comments, but we will allow that today. Mr. Cox, if you would. Thank you. Ms. Otis? Yeah, you can come up to the mic. Yes, thank you very much. If you just kind of state your address and then
you.
your comments.
707 Tappan Street,
Yes.
and it's very simple. I just would like, I think most people in Maumee who are paying for water pay for the water they use. Those of us who don't use the minimum are paying for other people's water. And I just would like to propose that people pay for exactly the water they use and the sewer rate. I don't use much water.
Okay.
And I'm paying for. And then also, I really don't think it's necessary for us to have that eternal flame anymore. I think that we can have a ceramic flame and save the city, what, $200 a month probably, at least. And I think that the souls that have passed on would probably appreciate that we are not wasting natural gas. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll answer your question here when we're done with the comments. If we have an answer for you, we'll certainly offer that. Ms. Stark? Just your address, please. And
126 East Williams, and thank you
Welcome.
for letting me speak. I wanted to speak at the last meeting, but I didn't realize that the process had kind of changed. So here I am today. I was going to email council members, but instead, after having a conversation with someone online, I thought sharing what we debated here in person might be more effective. She posted that article from the Blade after last week's meeting saying that council, kind of chastising council for not passing that ordinance that day in that article. And she said, I'm afraid I completely agree with the Blade about it. It won't be any easier for me to pay increased bills than anyone else, but the fixes need to be made. And I responded, did you happen to read the ordinance that was disseminated Friday for the council members to vote on Monday? She said, no, but if it's online, I will. And I said, I believe they removed it as it was kind of a lengthy ordinance that had emulated a similar ordinance proposed for rentals, when apparently it was supposed to be more specific to the EPA issue. Homeowners were not happy to potentially be subjected to extra inspections that were in the ordinance beyond the sewers. And I said, if you read it, I believe you would understand the objection of passing it on a first reading, as I read your post previously and you seem very reasonable. I applaud council for slowing it down, and quite honestly, I'm disappointed that sometimes it seems like they're in the precarious position of having to vote on items quickly without ample time to do due diligence. And I know I listened to what you just said, Gabe, and I'm obviously not on council, so I don't know how many conversations happen, but sometimes we as citizens don't feel like we do have input. And so I said it's not really fair to them because they do have a duty to serve the public. They have a hard job. I mean, I realize it's really hard for everybody on here. I know the public can be jerks, and I just feel like this whole town has relationship issues, and if you've ever had them, they're not fun. So it seems like that's the way it sometimes can be with citizens and council and what have you. So I said, I believe most people agree the EPA issue is real and want it addressed, but I thought it was inappropriate to tangle a super important issue with some other unnecessary wants, and shame on the Blade for not reporting the whole story. And she said it's important, and I said it's important, and I understand that they're voting on a reworked ordinance Monday at 7 a.m. It's much shorter and addresses the specific issue. Nobody said it wasn't needed or urgent. I just don't like our elected council members to be forced into kind of voting on something they haven't had a chance to really contemplate. And sometimes I was at that meeting, and it seemed like maybe, like Scott, I don't know. I don't know how much time you guys get to read 63 pages of ordinances. So it's nice to, when people do slow things down, if maybe they feel like they haven't had an opportunity to read it all and really understand. So this time I just want to say specifically, thank you, Ted. You're a little late and everyone's talking about you, but I appreciated that you voted to slow it down. I read about you before I voted for you, and I thought, this seems like someone who has a, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
For the other
Thank
four
you.
votes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, by the
Okay,
way,
thank you.
I'm out of order here, but I'm sorry I'm late.
Let the record be noted that Mr. Kurt is now in presence of council. Go ahead, Mr. Birch, if you have an answer.
Yeah, I'd like to answer Ms. Otis's talk about the water. Years ago, and many of you know, the city had a much higher minimum bill. I think it was 11,000 gallons. It wasn't 6. And then we went the other way. But remember, probably what we ought to have on our bills is that if there is a transportation charge or a conveyance charge to very clearly delineate why that minimum bill is there. There are certain fixed costs we have. If nobody used water, we have huge fixed costs, millions of dollars a year in fixed costs, even if nobody used a drop of water. Because we have underground infrastructure and all the things we have to pay for to keep the water that's in the system safe for drinking and potable. Likely, 80% of our entire bill is fixed. Like there's no way we could eliminate it based on usage, right? So realistically, you could have a minimum bill that was 15,000 gallons, and it may come close to covering the fixed cost of a system. So it isn't. I know it seems like sometimes you're paying for other people's use because you didn't use that much, but in fact, if the city, why some cities have fixed charge because such a large amount of their cost of providing water and sewerage is fixed, regardless of the use, that most people just have flat rates and everybody pays the same, which encourages in some cases for people to use more if they're paying exactly the same. But in this case, we have a fixed cost that has to be accounted for. 6,000, we kind of decided, the council decided that 6,000 was at least something, but even double that is a fixed cost. Makes more sense, but I don't think there's any movement to do that. Also, on Catherine's comments, I want to make sure council wasn't forced to vote on any ordinance, right? I mean, council votes the way they vote based on their conscience, so there was no forcing. And I wanted to make clear that, Ted, nobody was talking behind your back when they said people were talking about you.
No.
I didn't want to make sure nobody's talking behind your back.
Oh, I was.
But
Well, yeah, that's fine.
yeah.
But, no, if you were saying, I wonder where he is, I hope he's okay.
That's
fine.
okay. Well, we weren't asking how you were.
Thank you. Hey, I'm only 10 minutes. Okay.
All right. So very clear. The ordinance that talks about the conveyance ordinance is 8 pages long. It's not 63. That ordinance has been talked about for some time. The other ordinances are changes to existing ordinances, so they're not new. So let me just go into something in terms of what you all know and what I've espoused to you before. My 39th year as a city manager, I've dealt with this specific CSO, SSO issue with the EPA for that entire time of my career. We knew this was coming back when I had to report to the EPA over 4 years ago that we were dumping sewage in the river, and not only dumping it, we were pumping it. Obviously, as you know, we're in a pretty precarious position, and the council has to consider how they ramp the process up to make sure that they're doing the inspections. I mean, I was talking to Councilman Leinbach this weekend, and it was his realization that originally we'd hoped that large catch basins were the culprit, right? And we just tell those companies to disconnect their catch basins in their parking lots and we'd be good. Well, that's not what the data is showing. It's showing just the opposite, that most of them are homes that are causing that issue. And rightly so, that happens. There are a lot of people, those homes are built before the Clean Water Act, and you put both of in the same system, and that's how it goes. Albeit said, it still has to be removed, right? Still a violation, and the cost of not doing it is so much higher. If we had to build tanks to pick up a 10-year storm event, assuming the EPA will even agree with a 10-year storm event instead of a larger storm of 25 years, would be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, which there's no way the city could afford to do that. Even this way, it's going to be expensive, close to $100 million over a 20-year period. So we've got to try to get the stormwater out of our sanitary system, because even if you could store it and then send it to the county, and I'm speaking more to the audience, council is well aware of this, if we send it to the county, we've got a tremendous more water that we dump for free now into the river. We wouldn't be able to do that, which means now we're paying the county sewer rate, which would pump our rates up in easily 3-4 times what they currently are, just to pay the county, even if we could store it for hundreds of millions. So that's the problem we're faced with. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted you to, in all of our explanations over the last several weeks about this, and you spoke about the increases in water bills to take care of this problem. Would you share with the public, if the increase that we did was we saw what is needed and necessary right now and build a little bit of a bank, if you will, to do the service work that has to be done. The increase we came up with was based on our financial director and our administrator of what needs to be done and service people. Had we not done this increase and looking at another way to slow down the illicit dumping into the river, if we're not doing it quick enough, Patrick shared with me what would happen if a judge says, wait a minute, you're not getting this done quick enough. So would you go into that, Patrick?
Yeah, I don't think it's an option. Maybe Alan can weigh in here too. It's not been an option in my career to just say, we're not going to do it. Or we don't have enough money. Or our citizens can't afford it.
But I mean, as far as
the court's going to probably tell us to do it, because right now we're under findings and orders. We're not under a consent decree. Alan, if you can go into what a consent decree really is and the force of law that carries.
Right, basically, it's a court order that forces you to take action, usually imposes some significant penalties if you don't, and requires expenditure of typically large sums of money to fix the system and proof that you actually expended that money to do the fixes. So the more that we can reduce that cost and show the courts, when it gets to that point, the better off it is for the city.
Well, thank you. And I was also speaking that we had a conversation like, if we did nothing and we just let this go, all of a sudden the EPA or our judge is going to say, here's what your new rates are. And it's going to be substantially more than what we're paying now. That's the.
Not to mention that, and Alan could speak to this too, but as a city council sitting here, I'm not sure, now that you know the problem and the findings and orders we're under, for us to do nothing, I don't know how that makes you complicit legally. I mean, we know the problem. I don't know who would want to serve on council knowing coming in that every time you dump, you're committing a felony. I mean, I don't know how that would work. Alan?
Yeah, so that is one of the ongoing issues as to if you take no action situation, that the court's going to look at that in determining what type of penalties to impose against the city. And again, we're trying to minimize all those things to the best of our ability.
Thank you.
I would just like to make a quick comment about emergency measure enactment. There's a reason why that is brought forth before council. The administration has deemed a problem that is extraordinary through a number of avenues. It could be vacant properties that the police division is experiencing. It could be there's reasons why things come before council on an emergency measure. To disrupt that and try to circumvent that, many times handcuffs their ability to do their job. I am all for making sure that we have comments open to the public, and they can do that through committee of the whole. They can do that through their citizen comments. But I would just like to make a comment to council that it's a slippery slope to go down that road and handcuff our administration when they're trying to combat a problem that has been determined to be something that needs to get fixed immediately. There's also timelines for some of this stuff that has to happen very quickly. It creeps up and it comes before council. So I would just ask council to be very cautious about trying to disrupt and circumvent meetings by pinning it on the way that we do it, because councils all across the country and in this county act in this manner in order to get business done, and it doesn't stall out. So I just wanted to include that. We've had this discussion before, and it just seems to have creeped up again, that it's not the ordinance, it's the way it's read. And I would just caution as to what the motivation is for that. Anything further? Okay. We'll move to the consent calendar. And we need a motion to approve all the consent calendar items, and then we'll discuss these, please. Yes, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I move to approve all consent calendar items.
Second. Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Thank
Mayor.
you. Okay. We'll go over these and then vote. Recommendation from the city administrator to approve the proposal of the Flock Situational Awareness Operating Systems for the Maumee Police Department in the amount of $77,300. I understand these are license plate readers that the police department have used in the past, and this is a company that is basically going to provide that service to us and
Correct.
and store the data and all
2
that
years.
stuff. I've read through your proposal. So.
It's a 2-year agreement. And there's hundreds of these cameras just in the Lucas County area. And so not only does it give us, we get this nationwide.
Okay. And B is approval of the proposal from Buck Brothers for the parking lot reconstruction for the 2034 Dussel in the amount of $121,900. I also understand this is a timeline issue. Being the heavy construction period that we're in right now, this is necessary to enact very quickly, because if you don't get on the schedule for these guys, you're not going to get it done this year. They have a busy schedule, and so we wanted to get this through so we could at least get it expedited. And C is a recommendation from the city administrator, approval of the road closures on Holgate and Craig. That's for a Maumee Rec 5K race. Any questions on those? Okay, we'll call the roll on the consent calendar.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback,
Yes.
Noonan,
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
Okay, we have 4 individual new item businesses. Recommendation from the city administrator to approve ordinance 17-2024, an ordinance amending chapter 1345 and our nuisance ordinance of the Maumee Codified Ordinance. So we need 2 motions on this, please. Suspend the rules and approve the ordinance. Mr. Barrow.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I move to suspend the rules and waive the second and third readings of the ordinance.
Second on that, Mr. Fiskus.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I'll second that.
Okay, and we'll call the roll on that.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback,
No.
Noonan,
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
And I move to approve ordinance 017-2024 and ordinance amending chapter 1345, nuisance of the Maumee Codified Ordinance and ordinances 106-2020.
And I will second that motion.
We'll call the roll, please.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback,
No.
Noonan,
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
Okay, that approves ordinance 17-2024. We'll go to B, recommendation of the city administrator approving ordinance 18-2024, enacting a vacant and foreclosed property registry. And we need a couple ordinances or a couple motions on this, please. Yes, Ms. Puffenberger.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and waive the second and third readings of the ordinance.
I will second that motion.
Call the roll, please.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
No.
Lineback,
No.
Noonan,
Yes.
Yes.
Puffenberger.
And then I'd also like to make a motion to approve ordinance 018-2024, an ordinance enacting a vacant and foreclosed property registry.
And a second.
Oh, yeah, I'll second that motion.
I'm
Sorry, I just had a baby.
We'll call the roll on that, please.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback,
No.
Noonan,
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
Okay, that approves ordinance 18, 2024. Thank you. This is a severe problem that's been creeping up in our city that I'm glad you guys are willing to take care of that, especially with the vacant properties. And we'll go to C, recommendation from the city administrator approving ordinance 2024, an ordinance enacting a real property conveyance and inspection code with amnesty provisions and declaring an emergency. We need two motions on this, please. Yes, Mr. Linebacker.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and declare an emergency.
Mr. Kurt,
Second.
thank you. Call the roll.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback,
Yes.
Noonan,
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
And proceed.
Yeah, and now I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 020-2024, an ordinance enacting a real property conveyance and inspection code with amnesty provisions and declaring an emergency.
Thank you.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And we'll call the roll on that.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback,
Yes.
Noonan,
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
And D, or I'm sorry, that approves ordinance 20-2024. And a recommendation from the city administrator approving ordinance 21-2024, an ordinance amending ordinance 109-2010, and the video service provider to be paid by any video service provider offering video service in the city of Maumee, authorizing a municipal clerk or finance director to give notice to the video service provider of the video service provider fee and declaring an emergency. We need two motions on this, please. Mr. Newton.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. First, I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules and declare an emergency.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I will second that motion.
We'll call the roll.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback,
Yes.
Noonan,
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
And then I will also like to make a motion to approve ordinance 21-2024.
I will second that motion.
We'll call the roll, please.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback,
Yes.
Noonan,
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
And that approves ordinance 21-2024. We'll need a motion to adjourn till the next scheduled meeting, July 22nd.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Need a second.
Oh, I'll second that motion.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yep.
We'll call the roll.
Barrow,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback,
Yes.
Noonan,
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, just real quickly, we will be sending a letter out tomorrow to all real estate companies and management firms to make sure they are aware that when the property is transferred, this is immediate effect. So they'll have to have an inspection done. How we're probably going to do this, if you're closing in the next 10 days on a property, since the requirement in this is that you have to give us a report either from your private housing inspector like Great Lakes or inspection from us, it's going to be difficult to enforce on somebody who has a closing in the next 10 days. So I just want you to be aware because they won't have time to submit. So just want you to be aware. Thank you.
Oh, just an added comment. I would guess that 95 plus homes, 98% of the homes are going to pass this. It's not something that's common. It's going to, it is going to affect some properties, but they also have been put on notice a year or so ago, and they did not want to comply voluntarily. So we'll proceed with that. Thank you.